We all appreciate when someone remembers us and notices us, and thinks what we might like or might enjoy, and just does it, without going.
Welcome to Bigger Than the Hustle podcast, where I bring you real conversations with entrepreneurs on how they live their lives outside business. We deep dive into the energies, the motivations, the habits, the disciplines, and the mindsets that give them success in their life that leads to success in their business. Now, today we've got our second international guest. She's all the way over in Australia, and I'm so thankful she made time to see us, because obviously it's evening there for her and it's morning for us here in the UK. So if you want to understand what helps people think clearly and how to get people thinking clearly and critical thinking, whatever that means, I'm sure she'll go into that for us. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce her. Her name is Bethan. Hi, Bethan.
Hi. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Good. So I'm just going to hand over the mic to you. If you can introduce yourself and give a short background history to yourself, and then we can feed in the conversation from there.
Okay. Where to start? I am disappointingly British, as I've been told, although I'm an international guest. I live in Perth, Western Australia. I've lived here for 10 years, but I am originally from North Wales. And as you mentioned, I help people think clearly. We just had a little joke about, I've got my banner up. It's hiding a world of mess behind it from workshops and things. But yeah, my background's in education, but I've taken it out of the classroom and taken critical thinking to help people in their business and in their personal lives, because I found the tools really helpful for making decisions, forming opinions, solving problems, all sorts of things. And, it's one of those key skills that keeps coming up on those surveys that say, what you need for the workforce of 2030 or whatever. So I could see the value in it. And I really, love getting out and sharing these tools with people. So if you think critical thinking's from philosophy, but that's all about argument, and all the time we're having these arguments with ourselves when we're trying to decide what to do or which solution to go with. So it's like super practical philosophy for all areas of life.
Really interesting. You got critical thinking, and I know you work with organizations and you work with people in bulk. So organization, obviously a mass of people. Now, individually, critical thinking, how has it helped you in your life and your day-to-day or your year-to-year activities as a mom and as a human being, to then use that experience to transmit into organizations?
So as a mum, the way, I was already kind of teaching some stuff with it, but when you're pregnant and you have a new baby and everyone is giving you all the advice in the world, and there's all these different philosophies of parenting and now philosophies of education, now that they're a bit older, you have to make a lot of decisions and you have to back yourself in those decisions. So that's where I found it useful, just something like bandwagon effect is, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean that it's the right choice for you. Or, appeal to authority fallacy in critical thinking is where, someone's an expert, and because they're an expert, you've got to listen to them. And you say, well, yeah, you're an expert on that, but you're not an expert on me and my children, for example. So, you really have to get over any anxiety and lack of sort of self-confidence and just go for it. And so I could see the applications in parenting, and then going out into business and speaking to more people in different worlds, they'd be like, yeah, I need to be able to do that too, form an opinion, make a decision, back myself, or be able to look at the evidence that's out there and reach a conclusion and stick with it, essentially. So it's valuable in lots of different areas. So being able to pick apart an argument, and it's hilarious because you can pretty much find evidence to support whatever you want to believe, but you need to decide for yourself what you believe is true in the world and what you believe is the right answer for you. And I'm a big fan of figuring, to some extent, you've got to figure it out for yourself, because there's experts out there on everything. We're in the age of the expert, but no one cares as much about your situation and your decisions and your outcomes as you do. So you've got to have those skills to, be able to find your own path in life, essentially.
And I think something that you said was quite interesting is about shaping your own perspective and your own opinions about things. I've always found that your world or your reality is based on your perspective, and your perspective is based on the environment and information coming in from the environment, right? Now, our brain obviously filters out what it needs to filter out to prove to you that certain things are true. And then when you start deciding that maybe that doesn't serve me anymore and I need to start thinking in a different way, and you start picking up maybe something that's a little bit alien to the way you're thinking. So you may think that everyone is miserable in the world, okay? Because that's all you see around you. And then you're like, okay, now I choose that I don't want to believe that, and I want to believe that people are happy. Now, to believe that, first of all, it's hard because you've always thought people are miserable. But secondly, is that when you then decide, make a choice, just actually, I need you to show me that this is true. Then the filters will change in your brain, won't they? To say, actually, I start seeing more happy people, just like when you bought a red car and you didn't think anyone had a red car, then suddenly all the red cars appear. They were always there. It's just your brain filtered out all this information, correct?
Yeah.
Now, moving forward from that, if you then take that logic and you say, okay, my perspective, my world is going to be based on that, how does that change when you're going from dealing with an individual person, and you're obviously talking to one person, to a group of people? Does the dynamic change, and how do you have to adapt your dynamic to sort of adapt within an organization?
Well, I always adapt the sessions to suit whatever context I'm in, because, sometimes I'll be doing like a one-to-one with someone who's retired, and then the next it'll be in-house with a bunch of insurance brokers, and then I'll do like a schools project. So the examples that I use will always be tailored to their context. And it's really interesting when people start to realize, like you said, that's called pareidolia, when we spot patterns, even when there isn't any, because our brains just desperately want to spot patterns, even from birth. Spotting, we're designed to identify faces. And so we see faces in like a can of beer, or in the clouds, or whatever it may be. But when people start to realize, like, oh, that's not just me, other people do that. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Start to kind of appreciate that we are more alike than most of us realize, although on the outside we may look quite different. My 96-year-old next door neighbor will put on a pretty lipstick and will love it if I comment on that, in the same way that, if a friend of mine sees me and is like, oh, that's a nice lipstick. Oh, thanks, it's new, So age, nationality, ethnicity, culture, there are differences, but a lot of, what makes us human is actually very similar. So, I love when people start to click and see that in colleagues that they've known for years and have never really got on with. They're like, oh, right. Oh, that's why that's happening, or that's why you're like that. Yeah, those little breakthroughs.
Now, you mentioned in your introduction that you were born in the UK and you've moved over to Australia. Is it for the last 10 years you've been there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So where did that thinking come from, and where did that energy come from in terms of leaving the UK to go to Australia, and how has your life been since being there?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the end of that, but was it like what prompted the move?
Since you've moved, and what kind of differences have you experienced from?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I guess the reason that we moved out here was we were in London. I was teaching high school, and I was really burnt out, to be honest, quite frank. Like at the time, they're like, oh, it's depression, but looking back, it was more burnout. And so we thought, let's just try something completely different. And it was literally an experiment. We said, let's go for a year. Let's see if we like it. And that really took the pressure off the decision. And so when I'm doing my decision-making workshops, it's quite fun to kind of test people a bit and go, well, what if you just tried this for a week? What if you just did that for an hour? Or, tiny habits they talk about, like just floss one tooth and see what happens, see how you feel about it. So we came with the intention to come literally for 1 year, me and my now husband. 10 years later, we're still here. I kind of joke, I didn't really get what quality of life meant until we moved here. And I think, we got lucky. My husband got offered a job in Perth quite quickly, and we just kind of went, right, where's Perth? Looked it up on Google Maps, as a very, early Google Maps as it was then. Figured it out, saw the sunshine and the beaches, and we thought, yeah, that looks fine. And there's a joke here, Western Australia, so Perth, WA. WA means wait a while. It's a very much more relaxed, take your time kind of thing. So when we first got here, that was quite the culture shock. You want a flat in London, you hop in one of those minis, I forget the name of the company, and they drive you around and they're like, boom, here's a flat, here's the paperwork, and you're in that day, essentially, the next if they're being slow. Whereas here it's like, oh yeah, no, you've got to wait at least like 2 weeks until this one that we're showing you will be available, maybe wait until next month, and we're like, what? This is crazy. But it means that, everyone's just a bit more relaxed. It's just a lot slower. So I think like Melbourne and Sydney tend to be a bit more like fast paced, big city life, but Perth's very relaxed. But it means that people have time for, extracurricular activities. We mentioned just earlier before we came on about doing triathlon, which was a big part of my life. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why we've stayed so long, to be honest. We had friends from the UK here, but the triathlon club was our place, that we would see people pretty much every day, either swimming, cycling or running, and met people from Perth that were very settled, their families are here, and those people are still friends now, and I'm sure will be lifelong friends for us. So that, that was useful for settling in, definitely, and just meeting people that were here already, or meeting people who've just moved here and having something in common and a reason to connect, finding our tribe, I guess. Yeah.
Something that stands out quite a bit from the way your face changed when you spoke about it was health and fitness, and how important that's been for you in your sort of growth as a person. For anyone that's not on that journey of health and fitness, and maybe, like you said, this slowing down pace of life, I found that to be the best thing for me as a person, and having more patience about decisions and not trying to jump in. Because before, the old version of me, the 1.0 version of me, would be have an idea today and want to start tomorrow, and then by the weekend there'll be a new idea and that will finish, and life just continued like that. It's like a roll. And what I found now is that by just taking on one or two things and actually taking your time with them, enjoying them, if we have the privilege, I have the privilege of time now, where a lot of decisions I made 10 years ago have now come to fruition, and I can really enjoy life and take a step back and make decisions that serve all of us, not just me, but also I know will make me happy and will make me a better person because of the decisions we make. I'm not in a panic, because I know sometimes when you get stressed, you're in a fear mode, you can panic just to try and get out of that situation. And that's not the best situation to be in, that I found. So running, I found, was a huge, factor in that, in terms of using that energy, expressing that energy through running, and coming back. And it felt like my mind-body connection was so much better being involved in a physical activity like that, because then it allowed me to think clearly, have me take time out for myself and do things for myself, so that I can be a better person for my kids, my wife, my friends, my mum and dad, whoever it is that's around me. Now, people who are not in that situation, because we're still going through, a pandemic right now. We've still got COVID, obviously affecting a lot of people. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of stress. What kind of advice would you give to them for them to make decisions now, so that the next year is serving them well? Because right now, a lot of people are panicking.
Oh, gosh. I think, like you said, just taking a step back is so useful. journaling was something that when I was in real burnout, that was something I remember doing a lot. I do remember someone coming up to me at a tube station on a platform, and I was scrawling in my book, and they're like, "What are you writing?" And I'm like, "Go away, leave me alone." But you know, that's actually what prompted my fitness journey, if you like. It was, you know, the burnout essentially, and realizing I wasn't doing that. You know, walking 3 mornings a week, I'd walk across Clapham Common to work and feel like, yes, I've done my 3 fitness things a week. I'm good. And it's like, no, it wasn't enough to counteract the stress that was coming at me. So yeah, as I mentioned before, you know, just those small steps. I'm really super proud of my mum during the lockdown. She's in Wales, in North Wales, and she's done that Couch to 5K challenge. And, you know, it wasn't fast. I don't know how pretty it was, but she did it. And I was so proud of her. And that's something that she'd been meaning to do for years. So it is, like you said, like taking that time to look after yourself and put yourself first. And I know for me now, you know, I don't do half Ironmans like I used to, but I still run and ride as best I can, or get to the gym or whatever it is. And I can feel it. You know, I'm snapping at my kids more. I'm more stressed. I'm not dealing with things as well if I haven't done a good bit of exercise for a couple of days. And it's funny because, you know, you might go a couple of weeks and not exercise because, I don't know, you've got a cold or your knee hurts or whatever. But you notice when you do it again, you're suddenly like, yes, you know, I feel good again. I remember how this feels. And you know, physically, I can't motivate myself to exercise to look good. Like, it just doesn't do it for me. I can't be bothered. But then if you said, right, you know, do you want to, I don't know, be part of this team, and we're going to do a 5K together or something, and we're going to all try and improve our time, I'm like, yeah, you know, exercise to achieve something or to be strong, or yeah, just to cope with life. Like, yeah, it's so useful
when you have a bigger why than a veneered why. So like you said, just keeping fit or eating because I want to look good for the beach in the summer that's never, like yourself, it's never interested me. For me, it's like, if I'm going to go for a run and I'm going to eat well, I'm going to look after myself, it's because when I get to 106, I'm still going to be strong, and I'm still going to be able, I'm still going to be happy and healthy. And I'm going to, you know, I don't want anyone looking after me. I want to be able and useful for the rest of my life to the end of my days. In the Western culture, there seems to be a big negativity on old people in terms of not being able to think properly, not being useful anymore. And I think in the Indian culture, so that I'm part of the Indian culture, older people are respected a lot more for their wisdom. And even though they may not be able, they have a lot of hindsight and a lot of foresight to see things that we don't see as younger people. And you know, there's a lot more respect for older people. That's why you still get families that live together, where the parents and their grandparents, is that when I grew up, I had my grandparents and my parents, all of us lived together. And that was normal, because with an immigrant culture, we all, cost-wise, obviously, there's one thing, but that's how we've grown up. And that, you know, the solution was always provided by the family. Money issues, the family will sort that. And, you know, babysitting issues, the family will sort that. I've got a problem, the family will sort that, you know. And it was a nice structure to be a part of, because you didn't need a system and you didn't need a society. You had your family. And now that seems to be broken up more and more. It's even like us. We live, me, my wife, my kids, we live, and then my parents live in another house, which is only down the road. But yeah, they live there. My grandparents passed away now. But we see that it's almost like we're moving into the Western way of thinking, but still the importance of my parents and the importance of my grandparents is huge still. And I want that still to be, you know, I know it'll be diluted as the generations get on, and, you know, there's very little I can do about that. But the little things that I can do right now to instill that, where we go and see my parents every week, or every time we walk past, because it's only walking distance, that's really important to me. Because it's just because they've given me so much, and they've given us so much as a unit, as a family. I don't want that to be forgotten. Now, you just mentioned your mum earlier, and that's what sort of made me think about this. What influence has your parents had to make you the person you are today? And is there any stories that happened when you were younger that you can reflect back on that make you smile?
Oh gosh, lots and lots. I mean, obviously your parents have a huge influence on who you are. I'd say my mum's influence that crept is, a strong sense of community. She, when I was growing up, was involved. She was treasurer of everything, the Merched, which is like the Women's Institute in North Wales, and, school stuff, just all of these groups in the local hospice, fundraising. And now as an adult, I find myself, I've probably got like what we call strata manager here. So I look after there's 15 villas in where I live, and most of them are quite elderly. So I kind of look after them, and I'm involved with TEDx Perth. So I'm part of that team. And then this town team movement, which brings together business and community and local government. So a lot of things like that. I'm suddenly like, oh, I've become my mother. And she's just a good person. She's such a good human being. I remember her saying, if you think of someone nice to do for something else, don't second guess it. Just do it, because they will appreciate it. If it's a present or do them a favor, because we're all the same, and we all appreciate when someone remembers us and notices us, and thinks what we might like or might enjoy, and just does it, without going, oh, what can I do to help? Just, I've done this to help. So I'd say that's probably my mum's influence, and she speaks Welsh language, so there's a massive sort of sense of community within the Welsh community and Welsh culture as well. And then my dad was they're both pharmacists, but my dad ran the shop, and I worked for my dad from the age of 13 to pretty much 18. He passed away when I was 18, but I learned a lot about business from my dad. He was always analysing, the newsagent down the road, have you seen how he's done that? That's very clever. Oh, I like that. Or, oh, he's doing this in his business. That's rubbish. What was he thinking? And he'd often point out like these businesses that were doing what seemed very illogical, ridiculous things, but they were still making money. And I find that interesting today. Now I'm like, oh, how do they, geez, that's seems really bad business, but they're still doing it, and they're still doing fine somehow. So I learned a lot from that. And then obviously I think, well, how old was he now? 51 when he passed away. And when you lose a parent at that age, it's interesting, because I think, I never really saw him, when you get older and you go, oh, my parents didn't know everything, they weren't always right. So we were getting to that, at 18, you're starting to see, oh, they are fallible and they're not perfect. But he was very big on, just try things, take opportunities. He'd always coach the other sort of girls, the Saturday and the holiday girls in the shop that would come work for, it was like a seaside town, so it was very busy over the summer holidays and stuff. And he'd be like, get yourself to university. Really, education was really important, and make sure you go and you join every society and you try everything, and you don't stick with one boy the whole way through. So I took that to heart, and so when I got to university, that was always there. And just trying things, taking opportunities that present themselves is probably something that I got from my dad. And lots of really bad dad jokes. I love dad jokes and will laugh at anything, and that's probably his fault too.
It's really interesting when you mention your dad had a business, because there's certain things I can see in you which show up based on what's happened in the past. So what I mean by that is that my dad had a business as well. So it almost became normal that if I want to start my own business, it was a reality. Whereas other people I know where their parents have been in public sector jobs, for example, the business is so far away from their reality because they've never been a part of it. They don't, it's never been in their reality. So it's a huge decision. Whereas for me, it was almost like a no-brainer because most of my family had businesses. So there's a florist, there's a, beauty, there's lots of different businesses. So it's almost like, what, you're getting a job. So the entrepreneurship is running strife. And like I said, your reality is based on what you see, isn't it? And if that's all you see, that's all you know. So it's not so much of a risk. And that's why doing these conversations, I wanted to bring up people that show that conversations are happening all the time, whether they be negative or positive, but they are happening all the time. If we can raise more of the positive conversations and try and suppress the negative conversation, because then that can become our reality, and then we can talk to other people in the way you and I are talking today, because it can only help us as humans and as human beings to connect. Because in the end of the day, irrespective of what happens to technology, I had quite a sad fact, which is even though we are very connected today, probably the most we've connected in humankind, people still feel very disconnected. And that disconnection, I think, happens from comparison. I think it happens from social media. There's a lot of things. Obviously, social media is good for a lot of things as a tool, but where it starts, you start becoming emotionally involved, just like the news. It can give information, but as soon as emotional involvement comes in, I think that's where it can fall down. And it's separating yourself from that, isn't it? Now,
there's a really good book I'd love to recommend to anyone listening and to you. Lost Connections by Johann Hari. And one of the quotes from that, he talks about the difference between socializing online and in real life. It's a bit like the difference between porn and sex. Like, it scratches the itch, but it's just never as satisfying. And I'm just like, yes.
It's true.
We love social media because it gives us that, like, little bit of connection with people, but it's just never the same as, and this is pretty good, like the, one-to-ones like this on Zoom and stuff, but, it doesn't beat what we need as human beings to be in the room with someone and to be sharing those real conversations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And where we drop our mask, when we take our mask off, or whatever mask it is, or whatever hat we wear, like the dad hat or the the brother hat or the mom hat, and you're saying, well, this is me. These are all the downs, these are all the ups, these are all the flaws, these are all the scars, but that makes me, right? Recently, over the last few years, I've not chosen to spend my time investing in the people around me and the relationships that have served me and that have nurtured me as a human being. So these are like my family, friends that have grown up with me and spent a lot of time creating the version you see here. So a few weeks ago, I decided that I wanted to connect with one person a week for half an hour, and we go for a walk. So I'll meet up with them and we just go for a walk and we just have a chat. And it's nothing, there's no agenda. It's just checking in with each other. And rather than being just a message on a phone, taking that time out and go for a walk. I think when you walk, there's something that happens in your mind as well, where being outside, being in the open doors, having fresh air, and just being, like you said, connecting with another person with no other agenda apart from saying thank you for being in my life and thank you for coming on this journey and still being on this journey with me. And and for me, it was just showing respect for the time they've given me all their life. I can give that back. So like my uncles, my cousins, friends that have been around me. I just want to take that time out because I find that I get it. Life gets busy and I get that. But unless you make time is not going to happen, is it? You don't say I have time, because you never have time for anything. It's only when you choose to have time and you choose to put that at the forefront and you choose that to be important, does the world open up. Because until then, it can be a lazy excuse to say I haven't got time to do that, because you
100%.
Yeah, I don't.
You choose. You're choosing not to prioritize that and own that, right? Like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you're going to do. That's cool, but you got to own your choices. And saying I don't have time is bullshit. Like, you can say it's not a priority, or actually I don't want to, or whatever, and that's fine. But that's, own the choice, right?
Now let me do a little forward projection on you, Bethan, and now I just want you to think about this. If I could fast forward to a year's time, or 2 years, let's say 2 years' time. Let's say we're having this conversation in 2 years' time, and you look back and you say, okay, today I'm speaking to you, and this is what's happened over the last 2 years, and it's like, oh my God, I did not know that was possible, that this would happen and this is the way my life would be looking. If we could have that conversation 2 years' time, what do you think would be possible for you, and what do you think needs to happen for you to say, wow, that's where I want to be?
Oh, wow. Are you going to come and check?
It's not limited
to...
It's not limited to what you think is possible. It's limited to how you think. Anything is possible. Anything can happen. So where do you think that would lead you?
Oh, look, as you said, you've got to see it to be it. And I'm so blessed. I'm surrounded by people who are writing books, who are doing TED Talks, who are, working with amazing organizations. If I manage to maintain the momentum of what I'm doing right now professionally and still somehow manage my kids and my husband, and for them to be happy as well, I would be absolutely made up. I feel so lucky to be doing what I'm doing, and it's just snowballed this year. And ironically, lockdown, we're so lucky in Perth here, like lockdown was literally like a couple of months and then we slowly came out of it. But lockdown was a blessing to me because I was distracted doing lots of different things. So I think if I can just keep, I get to meet awesome people and be inspired, then I'll be a very happy whatever. Look, and maybe that will look like a book. Maybe that will look like more online stuff. Maybe that will look like keynote speaking. I don't know, but everyone that I speak to who is doing stuff that inspires me has been welcoming and helpful and supportive. And, there's that thing of like, if no one who's doing better than you will drag you down. And so, all these people that I see who are doing great stuff, they are just pumped for me and for other people who are just trying it out. And it's lovely. And, I'm very, very blessed.
And then, so I know you've brushed over that, but give me one thing that in 2 years' time, if it happens, it would be wow.
A book. I would be amazed and impressed with myself if I managed to write a book. A few people have said to me that I should, and I'd like to, but it's a big project.
What's stopping you right now?
Right now, I'm having too much fun. Honestly, too much fun, and 2 small children and a husband, and wearing too many hats. Yeah. So
it's funny you mentioned writing a book. So I had the same dream 4 years ago. And it was festering in the back of my head. And I always say, when things fester and they're still sitting there that much time, you have to do something about it. So a month ago, I carved out time. So I spreadsheet my day. That sounds so sad, but I spreadsheet my week.
No, that's great. Time blocking.
At gaps where I said, where am I not being productive, or where do I think I can fit that in? So I found a space which is 5:45 to 6:45 in the morning. After I'd made lunch for me and my wife. And I sit and write, and that's when no one's awake and no one is, that's my time. I don't have to think, there's no emails coming, there's no text, but I don't switch my phone on anyway. But, when you just make that time where, like you said, the journaling is a similar thing, right? Where you just sort of dump things and you write things on paper. And I'm in the process of a dumping right now. So I've written about 7 chapters of things, and there's no real structure. I don't even know what the book is about yet, but it's just about my thoughts and the way I think, and hopefully it will structure into something. But I'm not too hung up on that right now. I just want to get things down on paper and do it. And it's such a freeing experience, just dumping stuff that you've been holding and the ways you think. And you're like, and I like writing. I'm more of a writer than I am a speaker. I like, the old fashioned pen and paper, get down. Rather than the typing, I'm more of a pen and paper. Now what I'm looking for is audio translator because I really don't want to type it up. I've done like for about 10,000 words, and I'm not looking forward to that typing. So I might.
So you've got to physically go and type it all up.
Yeah. Well, I might get my daughter, bribe her somehow to sure she's always looking for some kind of extra pocket money. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay. So going forward from here, you mentioned about gratitude in when we just talked a few moments ago. What does that look like for you, and what's the importance in your life and other people who are not experiencing gratitude or are not using it to project themselves? What would you say to them?
Oh gosh. Well, I don't believe you can change other people, and I can't, I can say to my kids like, be more grateful. It's a good thing. But I don't know. I all the time, little things. I think probably having young kids in my life, and also having some really elderly people. So in my community where I live, there's like 3, 4 that are in their 90s, and quite a few others that are quite old. God, even just that, having those people in my life, I feel grateful to be around them. But also I notice how grateful they are for, as I mentioned, like a little compliment, or a leaf, or finding a ladybird, or that you brought the bins in for them. And then that, like you were saying about little habits and things that you start to notice, and then you go, oh yeah. And it just puts such a good frame on things. So rather than going like, oh, I have to put my kids' clothes away, I'm like, well, I get to. And you just have to look, here in Perth and also in the UK, we're in such positions of privilege in the world. And yeah, of course, everyone gets pissed off and everyone's got problems and there's things that you can get stressed about. But also, if you just take a moment to go, I've got a wonderful husband and 2 healthy, amazing kids, and you do not need to look very far to go, even just that, my little nuclear family, it would be so easy for that not to happen. And anything could happen in the next hour to take that away. And so, I don't want to be sitting in some car wreck somewhere going, oh God, I wish I was nicer to them, or I wish I'd told them that I loved them or that I appreciated them. So it's a habit that and it's funny, even now I'm like, yes, I want to go and tell them right now. But yeah, the more you do it, the more you notice it. I've got a journal that I do every day before I go to sleep. And it's just a really short sentence a day. There's like 3 little lines, and there's 3 years in a book, and I'm on my 3rd one. So this is like year 8 or 9 of doing it. And even just writing that down, because if you go to bed, and often by the time you go to bed, you're like a bit tired, maybe a bit grumpy, or you ate something that you didn't intend to, or had a drink, or I don't know, whatever. And then we go, oh, what have I done today? What have I actually done today? And every day I can look back and go, oh, I had coffee with that person, or I had a nice walk, or, I got to the beach with the kids, or I hung out at a playground with a friend with the kids, or I met this new person. And yeah, particularly since having the children, every day is different. I think pre them, there's probably a bit more churn, but yeah, every day is different. There's something magical about every single day. We just have to take the time to notice it. That sounds really cheesy, doesn't it?
I love that. I love that, Bethan, because it is real. And exactly what you said there, unless you focus on it, it doesn't happen. And then when you realize there's so many little things, and it's the little things that make up the big things, isn't it? It's like you said, the relationships, the people around you, tucking your little one in before they go to sleep, those little things is what create the great moments. And if you have a foundation of lots and lots of little things that create so much happiness, the big things are just automatic. I think the foundation of us as people and as human beings is based on all the small things. It's based on us as the strong foundation of those, which then create the big version that the world sees, but it's all based on what's happened already before and how you've been created as a person, right?
Yeah.
Now, Bethan, at this junction, we're just going to be heading over to the end of the podcast.
Okay.
couple more questions I'd like to ask you, which let the listeners understand a little bit more about you. But at this juncture, I'd just like to say thank you as well. You've been so open, and it's been, like I said, like two friends talking. And I've always wanted it to be like that, almost like where we can open up conversations to show this is the reality for a lot of people. I know you'll have a lot of people in your life that you can speak to like this, and I do as well. And if we can air some of these to show that the world is a kind and giving place, because it is, and irrespective of what the media and the news try and prove to you, I think we shouldn't let go of that human connection and just trying to be
absolutely. Everyone's just out there doing their best, trying their best, and doing what they think is a good
geographical boundaries, irrespective of color, creed, background, socioeconomic background. It doesn't matter, because we are all one team, which is a human team, irrespective of where the separation goes, right? So
love it. Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, not at all. Not at all. So these are the interesting questions now. So you're at the end of your life. So we're fast forwarding 100 years, and you've done all the things you wanted to. You've written tens of books. You've been a huge influence in not just organizations, but in your world and the people around you. And now you've reached the end of your moments where you haven't got enough energy to speak, but you've got enough energy to write 3 words. Those 3 words have helped you in your life, and they continue to help you. And you hope by sharing them, they'll help the people that are listening to this. What would those 3 words be for you?
Oh, God. I looked at this and I'm like, 3 is not enough. I think just something very cheesy, probably like, stay curious. Or maybe Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other.
And if there were
but that's 2 and 4.
If there were 3 individual words, what would they be?
Okay. Oh, man. Yeah, so curiosity, love, kindness, probably. Yeah.
There you go. Spoken from the heart, spoken from the soul.
Yeah.
Now, this podcast is called Bigger Than the Hustle, and right now you're bigger than the world. So I've connected you to 7.58 billion people on this planet. They can all hear you. They can all understand you. There's no language barrier. They're all awake and they're all conscious. If I handed this over to the mic to you for the next 30 seconds, what would your message be to the world?
I think look at the bigger picture. Something about look outside ourselves. Look at what we're doing to each other and to the world, and take a step back and ask, is that really what we want to do? There's so many big things that we're scared of and we're worried about, but if we can just all do little things, and we're all trying, but make it a priority to do those little things that are gonna make your world better, make someone else's world better, and look after our planet, because that's pretty fucking important too. Something along those lines.
That's beautiful. So at this juncture, Bethan, I'd just like to thank you again. You've been a breath of fresh air, and I love these conversations because they light me up. Even though we talk, it gives me energy and gives me a spark, and it gives me a huge amount of energy that I can give back, not just to the people that are listening, but the people around me. And I think that's what it can do for everyone if you really take this in. So at this juncture,
thank you so much. It's been really lovely.
You'd like to add just before we go?
There you go, on the spot. Any other business? Just, this has been a pleasure, and it's always wonderful, like you were saying, to connect with someone the other side of the world, with very different story in life, and just be able to just chat about stuff. It's really lovely. And as you were saying, it's nice when someone's open and willing to share, and I'm going to take away a bit of a kick up the bum to go and write a book and remember to go and kiss my babies goodnight.
There you go. Yes, that was
and always doing these kind of chats, it's that reinforcing those core messages that you want to live by and you try and live by, and to keep doing those things. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
No worries at all. Thank you so much. So
All right.
just before we go, this was Bigger Than the Hustle podcast. I'm Bhavik Patel. I'm your host. And just a few thoughts to leave you with. Big energy leads to big ideas. Big ideas lead to big thoughts lead to big actions, and big actions lead to a big life. So keep being big. Until next week, see you.
For everything I've experienced, I've looked back on now, they've been the most amazing seeds of blessings, because if they didn't happen to me, I would not be the man that I am today. I would not be able to get out there and inspire people like I do.